Well, I'm always at the airport.
Yeah.
Always traveling.
I kind of want to talk about that too, because you walk by your face every single time you're at the airport.
Yep, it's right there.
You're like,
Do people look at you and they're like, "Oh, hey, is that you? Is that you?"
Yeah, and honestly, like I've never been recognized in the airport while I'm passing by it, which is probably a good thing because I'm usually like exhausted, like after a week-long business trip. And just like, oh God, I hope no one recognizes me. But I get recognized in like weird places. I was at the Apple store getting my phone fixed, and like the dude across the table from me just kept staring at me, and I was like, this is creepy. He's like, aren't you the girl from the airport?
Bourbon Pursuit wouldn't be possible without the support of our Patreon community and with help of our following partners. To this day, the Eagle Rare Life Award has awarded more than $500,000 to rare individuals and charities they support. Read the stories from this year's nominees and vote at eaglerarelife.com. Hurry, because voting ends on December 5th, 2018. If you're looking for a new glass that complements any drinking experience, whether it's neat, on the rocks, or with a cocktail, look no further than the Duo glass from Aged & Ore. Use code PURSUIT to get 15% off your order and free shipping at agedandore.com. That's agedandore.com. Hey everyone, welcome back to this post-Thanksgiving episode of Bourbon Pursuit. I hope you had a great time hanging out with your families, opening some bottles, enjoying those times. And now that Black Friday has surpassed, Cyber Monday has surpassed, you are thinking of, well, what do I as a bourbon lover want for Christmas? And maybe you should take that opportunity to write down some notes, jot it down so somebody knows which bottle to get, which glasses you like, maybe some kind of ice molds. Who knows? But start thinking. This is the opportunity to start being selfish as the bourbon lover out there. But this is also a good opportunity for me to tell you that you've heard it in the beginning, you've heard it in the middle, and you've heard it at the end. But this is the final week for you to put in your votes for the winner of the Eagle Rare Life Award. This is a way that you can help change somebody's life and change a lot of lives by looking and listening and reading the stories of people out there that are being good stewards and good humanitarians. And go to eaglerarelife.com. Go do it now. Submit your votes and go help change the lives of others that are out there. Now, on our news, if you are a Patreon supporter, the link to purchase our new Riff Barrel is available, and those orders have been shipping out. I've got my bottles already, and I know other people have as well. So if you haven't done that yet, and you're a Patreon supporter, the link is there. Check out the post. You got an email alert. Get on that ASAP, because if you don't, I'm going to open it up, and I'm going to let everybody be able to order them if you haven't done it yet. So get on that ASAP and make sure you take advantage of those perks of being a Patreon supporter. Now, our pre-sale that we've had for Pursuit Series episodes 1 and 2 is available on Patreon as well. This is the last week to be able to get in your name on the drawing so you can be able to have an opportunity to be able to buy it, because at this point, with the names that already have on it, we're sold out. We are sold out of bottles that will be available, and we're going to have to limit this to 1 bottle per person and have to run a randomizer drawing. But don't worry. If you don't get in on either of these, or if you're not a Patreon member and part of our community yet, there's still time, because we're going to be doing 2 barrels of bourbon every single month, and it's all going to be available first to Patreon supporters. And you can get all the details of every bottle that we're doing and every barrel of our Pursuit Series private label at pursuitspirits.com. Now, we had Jackie back on episode 40. We talked about the brand, the history of Brown-Forman, the history of Old Forester, and we really talked about her journey. What was her journey like from being bartender and cocktail extraordinaire to somebody who's now being a master taster for Old Forester? And over 130 episodes later, she joins us again, and we're going to be talking through the expressions, the different lineups that we actually have within inside the Old Forester family. And we did that last time at episode 40, but this time there is a new extension, which is now widely available. We've talked about it before in the news, and that is the new 1910. It's available nationwide, so go pick up a bottle if you haven't tried it yet. Jackie is a wealth of knowledge when it comes down to this, and she has put down a significant amount of effort in being a respected authority in this field. So you're going to learn something good. And if you're interested in learning more about all the Brown-Forman brands, whether it's more about Old Forester, Woodford Reserve, Jack Daniels, or maybe you just want to hear a series from one of your favorite distilleries, go to our website, bourbonpursuit.com, and you can sort all of our podcasts by individual distilleries. Now, with that, enjoy this week's episode. Here's a message from Joe at Barrell Bourbon, and then you're going to hear Fred Minnick with Above the Char.
Hi, Joe from Barrell Bourbon here. We blend cask strength, high-quality spirits to explore the effects of different distillation methods, barrels, and aging environments. Find out more at barrelbourbon.com.
I'm Fred Minnick, and this is Above the Char. Craft distilling. It's kind of a polarizing subject in our world. The staunch bourbon lovers don't really care for a lot of the craft distillation flavors that come through, while the new age distillers are all about trying new things, trying new ways of making great product. You'll see them distill things like rice and triticale and smoke corn through old-fashioned techniques used in the tobacco industry. It's just a different way of doing things that the Kentucky bourbon distillers are not accustomed to. Thus, the flavors are quite a bit different. A few years ago, a bourbon CEO pulled me into his office and he told me how fearful he was that a consumer would one day consider New York bourbon the same as Kentucky bourbon. He has a genuine fear that new consumers will get a taste of craft bourbon, not like it, and then assume something like Jim Beam White Label or Evan Williams Black Label is no good because a craft bourbon they tasted was not to their liking. Well, I hate to say it, but that is not going to happen. What is going to happen, though, is if craft distillers do not make the product that the consumers want, they will go out of business. And sadly, we're already starting to see that. Death's Door, which I thought was one of the most highly acclaimed and important craft distillers of the Midwest, recently announced its bankruptcy. The European Union trade tariffs have also made it very difficult for craft distillers to get into new markets in the European Union. In fact, many distributors there will no longer take phone calls from American craft distillers. So now we're at a point when craft distilling is continuing to grow, but the question is, are there enough consumers to satisfy the supply? And I don't know if the answer is yes, but I will tell you, I love craft distilling, and I love the people and the stories and the hard work that goes into making new products. Whether it's Quincy Street in Illinois or MB Rollin in Kentucky, I am a big fan of the entrepreneur, people who are willing to take a risk, roll the dice, and make something new. So my challenge to you is, find a craft distiller. Love them. Love what they make. Taste it. Tell people about it on social media. And whatever you do, be one of the voices that keeps them in business. Because we cannot lose craft distillers like we lost the independent distillers in the 1950s. And that's this week's Above the Char. Hey, do you have an idea for an Above the Char episode? Hit me up on Twitter or Instagram at Fred Minnick. Again, that's at Fred Minnick. Until next week, cheers.
Welcome back to the episode of Bourbon Pursuit, the official podcast of bourbon. Kenny and Ryan here, the original duo.
That's us.
Yeah, but
who needs Fred?
Yeah, who needs Fred all the
lame.
time? Yeah, he's all his facts and figures and actual history.
I know so much. I'm special.
He's gonna listen to this and be like, God damn it, guys.
Yeah.
But but today is gonna be a great episode once again because we're talking about another iconic brand, Old Forester, but our guest today isn't new to the show. She's been on before, so we're excited to be able to do that. And it was kind of funny. We were talking about lining these glasses up and kind of talking through and going through the expressions of the Whiskey Row series for Old Forester. And I was thinking, I was like, man, didn't we do this a little bit last time? I was like, I think I have a vivid memory, a little maybe doing this, but
Yeah, I think we were at Rye or something, like
That's true.
upstairs.
We were
It just
upstairs.
popped up in my head.
yeah,
I don't know.
They had construction going on, and I
Kind of sounds like what's going on now in here. We're in a working distillery, so obviously.
but I think it's a little bit more soundproofed, if I recall that way as well. So,
But I'm excited to do it again, and we got a new addition to the lineup.
oh yes, we do, and I can't wait to talk about it because it's something that at the time of this recording, very, 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 very new and recent. But I'm sure everybody out there is able to go out and buy a bottle and pair it against the 1920, which is usually typically the crowd favorite. So it's going to be interesting to kind of go through that. So to date on the show, we have our guest that is making her second appearance on, and we have
You're
Jackie.
so famous.
I know. So Jackie
famous.
Zykan. Jackie Zykan, if I keep saying it right or
You're
correct.
saying it right.
Okay, so
You are.
welcome back to the show.
Thank you.
Now, have you elevated your position in the company? Are you still the same title as you were before?
Since the last time we met above Rye during the construction, the first time we did this, it has changed. It's just become a little bit more fine-tuned towards product and not so much ambassadorship. So my job title changed from Master Bourbon Specialist to Master Taster after going through a little bit heavier dose of production training and sensory training as well.
Who did that for you?
Yeah, let's say talk about the sensory training.
I walked into Campbell's office one day, and it was way before the distillery opened, and I told him, he probably hates it, or maybe he loves it, I don't know, but I just like barge in, and I'm like, hey, I know you're probably busy, but I have something to say. And I said, by the time that new distillery opens, I'll be the master taster for Old Forester. And he just like stopped and stared at me and was like,
This is news to me.
okay. No, but he's like, all right, I guess we should get going on that then.
Yeah.
And so we have a really fantastic sensory lab that's based out of the corporate campus on Dixie Highway at Brown-Forman. Sophie is amazing down there. So a lot of the sensory folks put together sort of a protocol because up until then, I mean, Elizabeth McCall, who's now the assistant master distiller for Woodford, obviously was master taster for Woodford prior to that. But she came from the sensory lab. And then before that, Marianne Barnes, who we lovingly know as Marianne Barnes anyways, she was the master taster prior to Elizabeth taking that role. So Chris had a hand in it to sort of just like guide through because he's been there to see both of those lovely ladies through all of their successes. But yeah, it's basically a big old checklist of
What's different about being, I guess, going through a sensory lab and maker or master taster? You've had experience in this, obviously. So are you like, guys, I've been doing this forever? Or is it like you really learn a lot of new stuff?
Well, yes and no. So, I mean, there is a certain part of having a palate that's you have to be able to associate. You can't pick out cinnamon if you've never smelled cinnamon. You have to have experienced a whole lot of tastes and smells leading up to that point. But we have a very systematic way that we go through descriptive analysis at Brown-Forman. And so when you have a product, you're analyzing it. You don't just go, okay, smell this glass. Oh, I smell cinnamon raisin bagel or whatever, fill in the blank with anything. You go through it and you compartmentalize it quite a bit. And you go, okay, so as far as sweet aromatics go, is it vanilla? Is it butterscotch? Is it toffee? Is it more caramel? Is it burnt? Is it not? Like all of those, you just focus on sweet aromatics and then you go through to the herbaceous qualities. Is it dried green or is it fresh green like tomato vine? And then you start picking it apart that way. Same thing with spices. Is it black pepper spice or is it more brown spice, allspice, clovey, that kind of stuff? And then you go through heat. It's like stepwise and there's a rating scale for all of that. So in order to go through this, you do have to sit down with all of these raw materials, and sometimes we use extracts just because it's a little easier to identify things like heliotropin. To me, smells like Office Max, but
What was
that?
Well, I know because
That's like marzipan. I didn't even know what marzipan was.
Yeah,
So
we're
You know what marzipan is.
I do now.
We do now. We got
It's a little bit different.
people
you can
send
call
us in the mail.
You can call it floral. I call it office supplies, like the smell of August. Like when you walk through the store and you can smell all
Like
the like
smell
fresh
paper.
binders and
Yeah.
like things that. Journeyman whiskey is really heavy in it. That'll give you a good point of reference. And for those sipping at home, to identify it, it's a somewhat weird floral ylang-ylang kind of esque binder. I mean, it just smells like a binder to me. It smells like a plastic binder at Office Max.
Sounds delicious.
Yeah, it's great. No, but there's all kinds of like weird, funky
Right.
little things that set every brand apart in its own way. So you go through all of that to identify all of those, and you go through a blind setup where they literally hand you a bunch of random stuff and you have to identify like, no, but this is close. And it's actually surprisingly difficult to pinpoint things that narrowly once you get it in a glass where all of those things are there, but you're trying to find the one that is most present there out of all of them. Because you smell things differently every day. You taste things differently every day. I should be careful that I joke about this because it has been taken seriously before, but I just joke that depends on the phase of the moon, right? Like any day is, no, we won't go into that, or how much sleep you had, or what you ate for breakfast, or whatever. Right, exactly. I mean, that all impacts it. And so maybe one day Old Forester smells like, I don't know, a vanilla bean, and the next day it smells like dill to you, and that's the number one proponent of that combo that's in that glass. But so it just takes practice, and it takes a lot of smelling and a lot of spitting.
I was about to say, what tips could you give to somebody that's out there that says, well, I'm not going to be a master taster at Old Forester, but maybe I just want to.
I want to be able to pick it out.
Yeah, I want to be able to pick out the glucoa, whatever the hell you just said.
I don't know.
Heliotropin.
Sure. Like
the paper binders.
Yeah.
Plastic binders.
Plastic binders.
School supplies.
Leah Frank. Isn't that what the good ones were?
Lisa Frank?
Lisa
Dude,
Frank.
Yeah. Lisa Frank. Back in the day.
Yeah,
that was my jam.
That's when you hit the honey barrel and you find those.
Lisa Frank series of Old Forester. Just wait for it. Rainbow labels, zebras, and all kinds of weird stuff on it. No, but that's an interesting point because I think that's one of the aspects that intimidates people about drinking bourbon so much is that they feel like everyone else around me is getting these notes and I'm not identifying them. That means I'm doing it wrong. And it doesn't at all. It's funny because people ask that. So like, how do you pick out certain different notes? But when I go to taste barrels and when I go to select things, I don't go through that in my mind. I don't go, well, this one's a 3 out of 10 in cinnamon and this one's a 6 out of 10 in dill or whatever. Yeah. I don't think of it that way. I immediately just go, this one is good and this one is bad. It's like, I don't know if it's because I've been doing it, and so like now it's just registers more quickly for me. But it's not just about little identifying notes. It's about the structure of the whiskey. There's texture, so much a part of it. The way it reacts to dilution, the perception of heat on it, everything about it. But okay, here's the biggest advice. Let's get back to answering your actual question instead of going on a rant.
I even forgot about it, but I'm glad.
Oh yeah, there was a question there at some point.
Because I was going to ask another one, but keep going.
Hey, no, it's an easy solve. Pick a brand that you love. Make it Old Forester. Do me a favor. Just do that. Identify with it. Get to know it. Learn it. And then as you're introducing yourself to other stuff, always sip them side by side because that will help you to go, okay, this one is spicier. This one is sweeter. This one has more butterscotch. This one has less. Exactly. Establish that baseline. Old Forester, and I mean, I'm paid to say this, of course, but I would say it anyways. Old Forester is a great baseline because it's very just typical Kentucky bourbon flavor. It's not overly sweet. It's not overly spicy. It's just what Kentucky bourbon is supposed to taste like. And so if you establish that baseline and then try things compared to it, you'll find it so much easier to go back and forth and really pick out which one is stronger in one thing or the other. It's so easy.
Now, you talked about dilution there for a second.
Yeah.
So what sort of variables does that throw into this? Because I would imagine that you start throwing water into it, what you thought you knew about Old Forester all of a sudden becomes like, well, these notes that I thought I was getting are completely different.
Yeah, it'll definitely wake up different chemicals that are in there. Different aromatics will come to the front of the glass. But it's, for me, the dilution factor of it is that the key indicator of a really solid whiskey, a really good barrel of whiskey, isn't that it tastes like black pepper or isn't that it tastes like marzipan. Let's just keep making the marzipan joke. It's that no matter where you dilute it to, it always retains the same level of finish and the same structure. It doesn't just fall flat. It doesn't wake up and explode and go crazy. It's not volatile like that, but it has a really solid structure that just carries through. And so when we blend our products, we blend them to make sure that we're always establishing that. So even though, say, what we're about to start tasting, the 1870, yeah, it's great, and there's a lot of like shortbread sweetness to it, but it's still got your typical Old Forester spice on the back end. But you're going to add water, and that's all still going to remain there. It's a blending.
Yeah, I got a question about.
Yeah.
I guess you talked about picking barrels.
Yeah.
And then blending them. So, whoops, I hit the microphone. But so say you go into where else and you got
it's only his fifth time doing this.
You know, you got a 4, an 8, whatever, a different range of bourbons, and you're like, how do you determine, all right, this one is ready to pull now for a blend, or we need to let this one sit? Like, or does one you pull it, like say you pull one that's 4, and can that one improve in like 3 years that would not hit? Does you get what I'm saying? I'm kind of confusing.
I totally see what you're saying. And there's definitely barrels that I've tasted that like you taste enough single barrels and you just get to know them, and you have a barrel and you taste it and you can honestly go 6 months it'll be done, 2 years it'll be done, in 3 years it'll be done, 4 years it'll be done. Like there's just it's so hard to describe. Like I don't know how to really articulate it.
I think
but
experience is one word to kind of
well, yeah, experience definitely helps.
You
with
say
that.
it's done, but it's like how do you know to let it go? I guess too.
It's the mouthfeel and the heat perception and the oxidation that's happened so far with the actual extraction of what's going on, and it's different depending on where they're from, how old they are. The season that they actually entered the warehouse affects things. Sometimes our warehousing is a little bit different, so it's not so much of a challenge. We don't have this wild goose chase going on. We've got heat cycling, and so it's pretty consistent in there for the most part. We don't get that top to bottom fluctuation. We do get outside to inside, but for the most part, it's a pretty controlled environment. But I see tendencies in warehouse location, and it has absolutely nothing to do with like top floor barrels and bottom floor barrels or anything of that sort. It's got to do with the side of the building it was on, and you can actually slice a rick. So our ricks hold 31 barrels in a stretch. You can slice that into thirds, give or take, and those thirds closest to the wall, middle, closest to the center aisle, and then it repeats again on the other side. You can actually notice a pretty significant difference in what happens once you add water to those different chunks, 10 barrels at a time.
Okay.
So but I mean, with single barrels, every single barrel is completely unique. The ones sitting right next to each other can be totally different. It's not so much the barrels against the wall are always sweet and the barrels inside are always spicy, or vice versa. It's more so the barrels against the wall are always really volatile and finicky, and the barrels right in the middle are really stable, and the ones on the inside, you just notice different stuff about it. What was your question again? I don't even know if I answered it.
You kind of answered it. I mean,
we're getting closer.
Yeah, we're good.
I'm just gonna throw everything out there.
Let's start from the beginning. What was your name again? But so you had mentioned, because right now we're recording this in do you like call it Jackie's kitchen, Jackie's experiment room, playground, sandbox?
We refer to it as the Atherton room. It's technically my office down here, so I don't work well in like a desk setting. I have a very creative mind. I'm a very visual person. We were just talking about that earlier about how I need big sprawling space. I need to write. I need to get ideas out, and I need it all right there in front of me. And obviously, it was always really hard being stationed. I still have my desk at Brown-Forman's corporate campus, but being stationed there, every time that we had to work on drink strategy or do single barrel samplings or whatever, it's a big open format. And so it's like the dinner bell. Like you shake something and like 30 people like pop up out of nowhere. Like, do you need a taster? Do you need a taster? I'm like, no, don't taste it. It's terrible. Like this drink is so bad. Please don't taste it. Like I'm going to go through 30 bad ones before I get to a good one. So please, like,
I'm sure there's no. I'm sure everybody's like, yeah, I don't care. It's
no, I know
it's 2 o'clock. I need something to get me through my meetings for the rest of the day.
It's definitely easier to do here, and it's a more neutral environment. So it's just set up for the things I need to get done.
Because we had talked about it in the past episode we had with you about your history and cocktails and being behind bars and sort of how do you cut your teeth in the industry going through there. But how much time are you spending at the distillery? Because I still want to talk about the master taster aspect through here, because are you tasting a lot of these whiskeys as they are being bottled, part of quality control, or are you kind of just...
Well, we have a really standard process that we do with all of the Brown-Forman products, and everything gets tasted off the still, obviously, because it's not going to be good after it ages unless it's good before it ages, and that's just how it goes. There's so many checkpoints. I mean, there's checkpoints. We won't even take a corn delivery if it smells even slightly like gasoline. Like we're very, very strict about it. So you taste it off the still. It can get tasted at 6 months and gets tasted again at 3.5 years. So with Old Forester, the youngest we go, and the bottle is 4 because we don't age statement. But about 3.5 years, you've reached a point in maturation where you can say, this is going to go here, this is going to go there. When you grow up, you're going to be 1897. Like you can assess
really pick
that
those
at that
out?
point.
You can really pick those out that you know exactly that 3 years.
Oh, yeah,
which
they're very...
brand line it's going to go into.
Oh, yeah. 3.5 years is where everybody figures out where they're going to college.
Wow.
In Old
So
Forester.
you're their like...
even birthday.
You're their
picked
guidance counselor.
Yeah, I guess.
It rolls up and you're like, yep, here you go, son.
But yeah,
Hope you like the pre-prohibition line.
And that's not just Old Forester.
You
that's
made it.
Jack. That's Woodford. It's everything we do gets tasted, and it's not like there's people sitting around like drinking in the office, you know what I
Right.
mean? It's proof down to 40, and like that's when your defects will start to show. Is you drop the proof and anything wrong with it is going to show. It's sort of a trick of the game of really, really high proof spirits. You can get away with a lot of things in a very high proof product.
I was about to say that. That was
Yeah.
something I don't think I ever knew, to try to sit there and dilute it down to
yeah.
about 40 proof. And then, because when I think of anything, I mean, 80 is about as low as you can go to be considered bourbon with inside the market. So even at 80, can you find something? Or, I mean, do you really need to sit there and take it
You
to
can
40?
find some stuff,
And
but it's best to take it down.
And so what are some of those the inconsistencies or those flavors or anything that deems the bad quality?
Red
Well,
flags.
we have company specific red flags. Not everybody has the same flags, because there are certain things that some other distillery might call a flagship to the brand flavor profile, and they might call it porcini mushroom. We don't. We call it must, and we say there's absolutely no tolerance for it. And with that one, so there's must. It comes in two varieties, right? There's corn must and there's warehouse must. The corn must smells kind of like a wet hay bale at a pumpkin patch. It's got this like very like farmy, grassy. It just smells like corn must.
Yeah.
But you're supposed to catch that on the front end. If you don't catch that with the corn delivery, you'll catch it in the distillate. It will definitely be there. But then warehouse must is like wet basement, sort of that more minerality kind of musty note that a lot of people pass off as being earthy or mushroom or whatever. With our sensory panel, if there's 100 people that taste the same whiskey distillate or the same warehouse sample, and of those 100 people, one person is like, I think I may have possibly gotten a must note. Gone, the whole batch. No, we don't tolerate it whatsoever. It's absolute zero tolerance of must in any of our products whatsoever.
It's like blackballing.
Yeah, it's just something that we don't necessarily think is a mark of quality. It's definitely not something that was part of the process of making the whiskey. It was just something that happened to be in there. And the corn must one especially is really, really bad because there were so many steps that you should have caught that on the front end.
Is that like a Yoda moment when they go through and they kind of say like, all right, Jackie, we're putting out like 20 samples. Make sure you smell through them or taste them, whatever it is. And you need
that's how the panel actually kind of works.
And
Like they will purposely spike some to make sure that you
That
pay
you're on your
attention.
point.
Even if you don't get that one, or they'll purposely put in a perfect reference too. And if you don't identify that as being a perfect score, all of your results are gone. It's all
Wow.
like they don't mess around with it. But there's other notes like diacetyl is one that you find with a lot of our stuff. Like Early Times is a much higher level of diacetyl than Old Forester. When I said diacetyl,
I was about to say, I was like,
yeah,
come
let's
on,
go
man.
to
We don't
let's
know
go
what
to
you're
this.
talking about.
Yes, you do. You do. And you don't even realize you
Enlighten
do,
us.
but you know it so well, and you're able to smell it. If I just say movie theater butter popcorn out of a pump,
Oh, you mean
like the butter, the really healthy stuff. That's literally diacetyl.
Maybe I should buy more. Well,
as a
that's why I
chemical.
like the Bottle and Bond Early Times.
So that artificial
I love
butter.
Artificial butter.
So it's in there. It's in there a little bit. If it goes above a certain threshold, then it's no longer on brand and it's considered a defect. But a little bit is part of the story. So that's just weird little stuff.
Let's talk about the first glass. that we
Okay,
got
let's
here.
drink
Yeah,
whiskey.
let's do it. Yeah. Talking of.
Okay.
Yeah, so what-
1870 is the first one on our left-hand side here, which you guys have had. And this one's been out for years and years and years.
And also, kind of while we're sitting here drinking and talking about this one, talk about the Whiskey Row series and how that differs just from is it 86 and 94? Are those the two different? Old
86
Forester?
and 100, what I like to
100.
call the modern-day expressions of
I
Old
should
Forester.
I should know that because I always bring.
Yeah, you bring a mint julep. It's either the 86 or 100 first.
I usually get a batch of each. I make for every year for Derby. I get a 1.75 of each, the 86 and the 100.
Nice.
And it's like depends on how much you really want to taste the whiskey in your mint julep.
or how much you want to like be drunk.
Well, responsibly. Always responsibly.
Responsibly, yes.
Always
Yes.
responsibly.
Forget that.
So anyway, back to we
Okay.
do this a lot. We get kind
Tangents.
of I know.
Oh,
No,
tangents.
it's
That's
my
fine.
ADD. I don't know what you can blame it
It's
on.
okay. We'll bring it on back. We're going to talk Whiskey Row. We're going to
Yeah.
talk about
Yeah,
how
Whiskey
that's
Row.
different from the
How's it
modern-day
different?
expressions of Old Forester, which actually have a really cool story that no one ever talks about.
Okay, give us the story.
Let's go. We'll just sip on this casually and,
This nose is awesome.
Okay, so
Marzipan?
let's hear about the modern day story too.
So, because everybody, I say everybody with my Louisville goggles on, you think of 86 proof Old Foresters as being like everyday Olfo. You think of 100 proof as being like everyday plus or whatever. Huge in the craft cocktail segment, bartender's darling. But no one ever thinks like, where'd they come from? right? Because Old Forester, when it started in 1870, which is what we're drinking right now, and this is at 90 proof, right? So that's how the brand started. It was a blend of 3 different distilleries. We didn't distill our own, not till 1901. We bought one of those distilleries, actually. But we started at 90 proof. George's whiskey tasted best at 90. That's what he did with. We switched to 100 proof. We went bottled and bond, and we stayed there until somewhere in the 50s, where lighter bodied and blended whiskey started gaining a little bit of traction. So you're thinking post-war, right? You're having to blend distillate because a lot of distilleries switched over their production methods, and everything was going to industrial grade alcohol to support the war effort. So you weren't putting back barrels as much. You still had barrels there aging, but everyone was having to cut it to spread their stock later on. And so you start seeing this change in the consumer palate of something a little bit less diesel fuel cowboy juice and something a little more blended and lighter bodied. We kept 100 proof Old Forester bottled and bond for the most part, but we introduced the second brand called 86. So that was born in the 50s in response to post-war palate change, which is awesome. It's just interesting to think about it that way. We kept those 2 running until vodka happened and took the industry in a totally different, right? So we were sitting on too many barrels. You couldn't blend them together because you couldn't do bottled and bond unless it was one distillation season. And so we pulled ourselves out of bond to introduce the 100 proof signature, and that was in the early 90s. So it was weird. They were both born out of weird, different, opposite directions of what impacted the industry, but those are your everydays, and they are different. They are different. 1870. Shall we?
Cheers.
Well, cheers to that.
Cheers,
That's a
yeah.
Good little history.
Oh,
session
now you
there.
guys know.
Yeah, that's a good little history
little
lesson.
boomerang.
I
Smells like
know,
Old
right?
Forester.
Yeah, get another one. So this is the 1870 that we're trying right now. This is what's quoted the original
The
batch.
original batch.
So it's just original batch because this is 90 proof, kind of looking back into what it was at that time. This episode of Bourbon Pursuit is made possible through listeners like you, supported through Patreon, and with partnerships brought to you by the following. Every year, there are hundreds of stories, just like the ones you're going to hear, that are in the running for the Eagle Rare Life Award. Sean Swarner, he's a man that survived 2 terminal cancer prognoses, climbed Mount Everest with 1 lung, climbed the highest mountains in each continent, and skied to the North and South Poles. Or Tiffany Fixter. She's a former special education teacher who founded the first brewery to hire adults with developmental disabilities. The grand prize of $50,000 will go towards the charity or cause of the winner's choice. Voting ends December 5th, so head over to eaglerarelife.com and vote now. Versatility. It's what's been missing in the glass space. We've got rocks, Glencairns, Copitas, brandy snifters, and more to accommodate a wide range of drinks and the way we enjoy it, with or without ice. It took a Kickstarter campaign to change things up, and this is where the Duo glass from Aged in Ore comes in. It's a 10-ounce double-wall glass that eliminates the need for coasters. It's tulip-shaped that allows your sense of smell to pick up a wide array of flavors. And it has 1-ounce indicators, so no need for more glassware when making cocktails or pouring just the right amount of your favorite bourbon. It's also ice ball ready that comes with its own 2-inch ice mold that snugly fits into the glass for a slow melting experience. For a limited time, Bourbon Pursuit listeners get 15% off orders and standard free shipping at agedandore.com using the code PURSUIT. So go over to agedandore.com, that's aged and ORE.com, and get your Duo glasses today. What's quoted the original batch.
Original batch.
So it's just original batch because this is 90 proof, kind of looking back into what it was at that time.
Telling the story, that was the whole purpose of the Whiskey Row line extensions, was to tell the brand story little by little leading up to this establishment opening on Whiskey Row. And so back then we blended from Atherton, Millwood, and Mattingly, hence why the room's on this floor called Atherton.
Mattingly.
We get it.
Real nice.
It's all coming together.
Yeah. So we blend from these 3 distilleries back then because that's how you make a consistent product. You blend, right? And how you guarantee the quality, you bottle and you seal it. The whole premise behind Old Forester. And so obviously we make all of our own juice today. We couldn't blend from 3 different distilleries. I guess we kind of could have. You know what I mean? Like you could have made Olfo at Jack and Woodford and at BFD.
Oh gosh! That just sounds like a new line. Sounds like a new line.
There you go. Campbell.
Yeah.
Hey Campbell, I
The
got
new
something on the Bourbon Pursuit
1870
podcast.
We're gonna have a 5th one in the Whiskey Row now. No, nonetheless, we blended from 3 different warehouses, so it's 7 barrels from each of 3 warehouses. different days of entry and different proof entries, and we're all slightly different just to sort of mimic the whole, this is how we tell the story, the fact that we blended. We're not ashamed, and we don't hide the fact that we were a non-distilling producer back when we first started. George wasn't a distiller. The Brown family wasn't a distilling family.
And most big brands are, you know, back in the day. So
yeah, so 1870. It's great. I like to think of it as sort of the Goldilocks of the family. It doesn't disappoint those who are really into bourbon, but I think it's not very scary for those that are just getting into the category. It's like right there in the middle. It's a great whiskey.
And they want something that maybe they're trying to press their friends. They want to just maybe throw an extra $15-$20 down on the line and be able to have a different bottle in their repertoire as well.
For sure. But good. It's good.
So 1897. Because the other thing to also represent about the Whiskey Row series is that the dates all mean something.
They do.
They all mean something, and I think that's what our listeners should also take into consideration here, is that when you go through here to understand exactly what these dates are representing, because they are pivotal points inside of the Brown-Forman and Old Forester distilling history.
Definitely. So we started in 1870, hence the 1870. 1897, which, if you don't know, now you know, that's the complete passage of the Bottled in Bond Act. And so at that point, we pivoted from being a 90 proof product, even though George did not want to switch. But you can't be the one guy that doesn't bond your whiskey, or no one's going to buy your whiskey because they're going to think you're trying to get away with something. So we switched to being Bottled in Bond, and Old Forester then switches to being 100 proof. There forward, there's always been a 100 proof Old Forester on the market since 1897.
So what makes this Bottled in Bond versus the other 100 proof just Old Foe?
Totally. So the 100 proof signature, as I always think of it in my mind anyways, it's funny, you can always know people that drank Old Forester before it was cool to drink Old Forester because they call it signature. Just saying. So 100 proof signature is a blend of different years. That was the entire inception of that product in and of itself, was to blend older whiskey together because we couldn't be Bottled in Bond. So this is true to form out of one distillation season. Even though we don't indicate season on the strip or on the bottle anywhere, we are pulling it from one distillation season. Obviously, it's just us making it. It's 100 proof, and it's 4 years old. It's meeting all of the requirements. So.
Let's hope so. We have to send somebody to do these checks and balances for you.
Do we?
I don't know. I mean,
I trust.
It's not on the label. I mean, you got some label snobs out there.
What, that it came out of the fall or spring?
You got label snobs out there.
Yeah,
I'm not one of them. But there's label snobs out
They
there.
have nothing to do but nitpick.
But nitpick through it?
Yeah.
Okay, I will put my name on it. Trust me, the Old Forester Bottled in Bond is actually out of one distillation season, even though it does not mark the season or the year on the bottle.
You heard it here. So
You heard it here.
If you got a problem, take it up with Jackie.
Call me.
So I guess I actually like this more than the 1870. I don't know about you all, but maybe it's because I'm a proof snob when it comes down to it too.
Are you? You're a proof snob? This one is, until we released the 1910, this one to me was the most unique out of the entire collection. It's a black pepper bomb. It's a huge spice bomb whiskey for Old Forester being what it is.
I'm just curious, Jackie. I think I
what's
have
up?
mine backwards.
So we're going left to right.
Left to right.
So you were just on 1920, 1910. You time traveled real quick there. You can bring on back
I was
home.
like, all right, went from black pepper to not black pepper, and you're talking about this being black pepper. I think I'm wrong.
It's crazy.
Well, at least you know your palate's up to
Yeah,
up to
no, see? There you
I
go.
made the cut. You
did.
She was trying to throw me off. I did it.
You're official.
Yeah, you pushed it out. You're like, this is the reject sample, right?
Exactly.
So
I see what you're doing. You were following the bottles. that
Yeah,
are
I was following the
displayed.
bottles.
It's okay. So
I
yeah,
don't
this
follow
one is
directions very
definitely.
well.
I get the most pepper and the most spice out of this one. This is the one I always told people, if you're a rye drinker, this is the Old Forester for you, for sure. These are all the same mash bill. Keep that in mind. This is just manipulation of blends, and proofing and filtration techniques and age. That's where it all comes from. But this was definitely the spiciest one. But I can only say that until February, and I can't say that anymore.
Oh, okay. Well, we'll keep talking about it here. So I guess
Am I allowed to say that?
Another question.
Yeah, well, I mean, in
No.
February, then we can just say if you're a rye drinker, you can drink Old Forester rye.
Hey.
Oh.
Hey.
All right, keep
So
going.
another question about just the Whiskey Row series in general. What was the idea of saying, okay, we're going to make permanent line extensions? Because it seems the big money grab nowadays is people want to say, we're going to create limited releases on fucking everything. And they want to try to go for
Whoa.
it. So why?
F-bomb.
Well, we are an explicit podcast.
are.
Even though we don't really cuss too much, but it really is seem like there is an idea for a money grab out there. So why go with something that's a permanent extension and not just something that's just going to be out for maybe a season or two?
Right. Okay. So there's a little bit of a different situation that goes on with Team Olfo. We have a little bit of a different culture. We 100% believe in making the most quality and the most consistent product. It is literally the blood that runs in the veins of the Brown family. Old Forester is. It is the establishing brand of this entire company. It is quality, quality, quality first, not trend first, not how do we take advantage of what's going on. I mean, these were different ways to sort of flex and manipulate flavor profile to show some diversity, and that's definitely helping. So people that like sweet bourbon, people that like spicy bourbon, people like high proof bourbon, like there's an Old Forester for everybody, right? Why would we just one off that just to take advantage of the boom going on? I mean, birthday bourbon, we don't price it. Suggest price it. I don't know what people do once they get it and reprice it, but nonetheless, to be over $100. And that's our most allocated item, hands down. That's just not what we are as a brand. We want it to be affordable. We want it to be approachable. It's just good whiskey shouldn't have to put you out, you know? Mm-hmm. And to just throw it out there and then take it away. No, I mean, this was our chance to, number one, tell a story. Yeah. That story doesn't go away, so it's going to remain there. And number two, like, be able to showcase what we can do flavored wise.
Yeah, and they're all pretty priced right. I mean, you know,
yeah,
you can
they're all approachable.
You not break the bank, and you can try a bunch of different styles of bourbon, you know,
totally.
from the same place.
And it's kind of interesting to kind of take that in a little bit different direction too, because, you know, you talk to some people and they might be either misinformed or they just don't understand the market enough, but they'll say, is there a bourbon shortage? Is there not enough bourbon to go around? And I always have to say, like, oh, have you been to a liquor store recently and looked? Like, there's bourbon everywhere. And so, I mean, what's your all's response to that? Because it seems like, okay, yeah, we can take stocks that are coming from just the Old Forester brand line and be able to create new lines out of these too. So it doesn't seem like you all have anything that's in regards of a bourbon shortage at all.
No, I mean, we've been in the business a long time. We've seen it ebb and flow all across the board. Brown-Forman does an amazing job of being able to forecast and anticipate market demand, hands down. This isn't just like willy-nilly, like, this is hot right now, so just turn the still on and let's just go and hope that it's still hot in 4, 6, 8 years.
Well, you better hope with this new experience in downtown, you better hope that it keeps going.
We're fine, no worries. But yeah, there's a lot of planning. We plan very, 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 very far out.
That's what Camel gets paid to do, right?
Yeah, Camel gets paid to plan really, really far out. So, yeah, like things that we'll release in 2020, things that we'll release after then, these are things that we started conversations about 5 years ago. So, yeah, we're not running out anytime soon. I can't speak for everybody. But
that's good to know. So let's go to the next one in the series here. What do we have?
This is the most exciting one, too. This is the new one, okay? So this is 1910. This one is just being released right now. So in 1910, it was kind of a significant year for Old Forester. Here, in the space that we're in right now, on Whiskey Row, they had a batch. So in 1910, Old Forester was 100 proof, bottled and bond. And they were about to bottle. And there was a fire on the street. Who knew that things catch on fire on the street?
Weird, right?
Yeah, it's very strange. So they couldn't use the bottling line. They had to get out. So they got this big old vat of whiskey that they couldn't bottle. When they were able to actually get back in, they couldn't go into full production with it. They had to get rid of it somehow. They put it back in barrels and set it aside. Now, they sold it, but they didn't sell it as Old Forester. They sold it as a product called Very Old Fine Whiskey. And so hence you'll see Old Fine Whiskey on the bottle of 1910. And what this is 100 proof Old Forester that would have been bottled and bond, ready to go, sitting in a tank. And we've put it back into a barrel, but it's not a normal Old Forester barrel. It's a heavily charged to the point of disintegration barrel.
If you were to say, like,
don't give me levels. Levels don't exist. For us, levels don't exist. We go by seconds.
Levels don't exist, but for the rest of the bourbon world, levels do exist. So if you're to say level 4,
but there's no industry standard level.
Okay.
You can't go. You know what I mean?
How many seconds?
Seconds. So if you're doing a standard,
if I think correctly, level 4 is like 6 seconds or 8 seconds, something like that.
you could classify an Old Forester barrel as being alligator number 4 if you really just wanted to put a generic title on it. And it's a 22 second. It's a 22-second char.
Okay.
It's not a number 4. It's not an alligator or anything. It's a 22-second char. But we were able to take it up 55.
Crocodile. It's a crocodile char.
Sure.
There we go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So anyway, go ahead.
55 or so in the 50s, then you start losing integrity of what it's actually supposed to be doing, which is holding liquid. But you can take it up that far char-wise. So almost 3 times as long on the charring process as a normal Old Forester barrel. This is totally different from double oaked. Double oaked uses a super heavy toasted, super sweetened up barrel for their secondary finishing.
Also talk about double oaked is Woodford Reserve. Correct?
Yes, sorry.
Okay.
Double oak, Woodford double oaked is totally different from this product. Theirs is so butterscotch heavy and so sweet. This one, I think you get a lot of the sweetness that's coming from that second wood.
It's got like
but
dusty funkness to it or something.
It's got, it's honestly, it has almost that aspect. You know, if you drink like old whiskey, like
yeah, it's got that funk.
it's got that antique mall dresser drawer.
I love it.
Mothballs.
Weird.
Are we looking for that?
Not mothballs.
No, not mothballs.
But it's got this like
Binders.
inherent. It's got this inherent sort of like charry backbone to it, and it's super chocolatey. I love it. I think it's fantastic.
Yeah, it's
Nutella,
really good.
it's awesome.
Well, and this
Sorry.
is really refreshing
Chocolate
for me
hazelnut
because like
spread.
a lot of, I guess, newer releases are barrel proof, which is great, high proof, awesome. But this is was it 93
It's
proof?
93.
And it packs a ton of flavor for a 93 proof. And
does.
that reminds, like, a lot of the older whiskey, I appreciate them because they have so much flavor added at a lower proof where you don't require that, barrel proof, I guess, to get all those.
Right. And you don't have to. I think every single barrel, every single blend out there has a sweet spot. And for this one, obviously, if we were starting with 100 proof whiskey, and we put it back in a barrel, and we finish it for 6 to 9 months, it's not going to all of a sudden become 130. You know what I mean? Like, it just, science doesn't work that way. So
How many times or how many different barrels were you trying to test and say like, okay, 22 seconds, 8 seconds, 4 seconds, just toast it? Like, were there different levels of things that you were playing around with to find
there
this?
were different ranges that were performed. There were a lot of barrels that just, got burned up. It happens. Like, what are you going to do? But
It was still on fire when you're putting the whiskey in there.
well, I mean,
Like,
you
it's still smoking.
You take it and you do a barrel at 30 seconds, and a barrel at 40 seconds, a barrel at 50 seconds, a barrel at 60 seconds, and then you test them, and the ones that leak fail, and the ones that don't, there you go, and you kind of narrow down your little niche. But no, I don't think every single barrel is destined to be barrel strength. I don't think every single bottling is destined to have any. There's a sweet spot. That's what we do for birthday. Literally taste it from 86 all the way up to the barrel strength that it comes out at every single proof point, and whittle it down to the sweet spot and go from there.
Yeah, I mean,
And-
this was honestly, I love it.
I know, I'm not-
so good.
which is weird because we're getting ready to taste the 1920 next, which is like,
usually my favorite.
well, it's the fan favorite.
No.
When you think about it, I
It's
mean,
the Fred Minnick effect,
well,
probably.
it's not that. I mean, it's the Facebook,
It's like the Oprah effect.
the Facebook forums
It
and
comes with
everything
a
like
free
that.
ascot.
I mean,
Yeah.
the Facebook forums and everybody, they kind of go. It could be they go a little crazy for it. You get a few good reviews out there, and you kind of get on this train, and everybody's like, yeah, this is actually really good, especially for something that's not highly allocated, always on the shelves. So I talked about it enough. Let's drink it a little bit. So
I've already had it because I went in the wrong
Yeah,
direction.
you thought it was 1870. I mean, there was a really interesting thing that happened with 1920. So the story, we'll go with the story first. In 1920, Prohibition goes nationwide. Old Forester was operating under Kentucky Permit Number 3, selling medicinal whiskey the entire time. So literally since 1870, there has not been a single day where you couldn't go and buy a bottle of Old Forester. You may have had to fake a cough, but whatever. Like, you've always been able to buy Old Forester straight through. Same family, same company. So yeah, it's an incredible part of our story for the category, but this was the first time that Old Forester was offered at this high of proof. And this was the first one, because 1910 wasn't out, keep that in mind. So people had already had Old Forester at 90 if they had single barrel, or 86 proof, close enough. You already had Olfo at 100 proof, so it's like, yeah, okay, we've already had bottled and bond, we see bottled and
done
bond
it, we've
everywhere,
been there.
whatever. This, it was like, oh wait, Prohibition, I identify with that. Oh wait, it's higher proof. I like high proof. I like Old Forester. And it just exploded. It did so well. It still does.
Yeah, it's
But
very good.
I've got this feeling 1910 is going to be the new darling. I'm just saying.
Yeah, it's got a vote in my book.
yeah, do you keep a pulse on say like Facebook forums and the bourbon community like that to kind of see what people are digging, like what the community response is?
I hear things from other people, but I try not to get super wrapped up in it because it is so subjective. It's all over the place. I pay attention when I'm out in the market, and every market is a little bit different. I pay attention when we do trade shows and things like that, the whiskey fest of the world, the new products that are out there and what people are saying about it. But for the most part, everyone drinking whiskey is such a personal thing that you just can't trust even if it's groups, like there's just too much noise out there, and everyone is so swayed by the marketing that one company invested millions of dollars in, and it's not just about product, and I just never really find it reliable enough to spend time paying attention to.
So we don't matter.
Well.
No, I'm just kidding.
I'm not saying that at all, not whatsoever. I'm just saying, as far as where I need to lead from is a point of the product that I'm involved with, which is Old Forester and only Old Forester. Are we doing the best we can to make sure that it's quality and that it's a value and that we're literally making it the best that we possibly can all the time and doing what's true to us, not so much about what's in the periphery of the rest of the market. So
For sure.
I mean, when you think about it, like what Facebook brings is a different dynamic because, all right, it's bad because it gives everybody a voice, right? So there's a lot of noise. However, it's also a congregation of 30,000 people in one sitting. And so when somebody says, "Oh, I'm pouring Old Forester 1920 tonight or 1910," and you see a slew of comments, and some people are like, "This is great, best bourbon for the money," and then some people are like, "Not my cup of tea," or even worse words than that, right? So I kind of find it amusing that people, maybe you don't, but I'm sure somebody probably tries to keep a pulse on what's happening in that sort of community.
We have digital media specialists on all of our brands at Brown-Forman that do keep an eye out for all of those sorts of things. Me personally, like I'm saying, like if I read some thread, even if it's a very even if you guys were saying this is crap, this product is terrible, blah blah blah,
we wouldn't say.
Is that me going to go back to the office and maybe like, you guys really need to do something about that? Everybody hates it. Like, no, we believe in every single thing we put out there coming from us as a brand culture, and if you like it, great. If you don't, that's cool too. But, we're making what we think is a really great product. So, I don't know.
I really like the Old Fine.
Old
So
Fine,
good.
Old Fine.
I was about to say, I was like, I'm going back and forth between the 1920 and the 1910 because, the 1920, it really was. It was something that, because this was a 2017 release, when 1920 came out. Now, the 1910, it's been noted that this is, quote unquote, the last of the Whiskey Row series.
It is, except for, that secondary 1870 that we just said we're going to make from 3 distilleries. That's a joke. That's not really happening.
I think it should.
It could.
No, we're done with the series. We have other exciting things in the pipeline, like rye, obviously. That'll be our next big thing. But it's done its job. It's done its due diligence. It's told the story and led up to the opening of the distillery in Whiskey Row. So
I was about to say, I was like, you could come out with the Old Forester 2014 to kind of talk about this building and stuff, but then people would see it and they'd be like, wait a minute, that's a 4-year-old whiskey or something like that. If they're like, it's a little too young, and they're like, no, it's just the date that's symbolic.
I know. Like, some people think that the 1870 is whiskey from 1870, and that's absolutely not the case. But nonetheless, I mean, the brand has such a rich history that we could go on forever just cherry picking different events out
dates.
and
There's
doing
a day for
different things to
everything.
celebrate.
Yeah.
Exactly. So
I just find it refreshing because, like, limited releases, they drive me because I'm not going to camp. It's as a zoo almost. And, like, I love this because you can just go and find them and get them and buy them and not have all the drama, and pay an enormous amount of money.
I don't want you to fall in love with something and then have it ripped out of your hands. That's terrible. I mean, maybe we'll cycle through. I don't know. Maybe we'll add on a new one, but we'll drop one and we'll only sell it in the gift shop because now we have a home place. We can kind of do those things, right? Where you have to come see us to get the special stuff. But
there is one thing in the gift shop.
Oh, yeah.
Go on.
So tell us about
Pray tell.
the President's Choice and the role you've had in that, because we've talked to Campbell about that, but he says you're an integral part of that. So let's talk about that.
Integral. So President's Choice, we stopped selling in 1972, and we finally brought it back because we finally have a president, Old Forester again, right? So we have Campbell. But I took samplings from a bunch of different spots in the warehouse. We tried to keep the line, the new modern President's Choice, still within the same parameters that the old school President's Choice was, which was an 8-year-old product The barrel strength that they used back then, or what was noted as being barrel strength back then, was between 110 and 120. That's not the barrel strength these barrels are dumping at today by any means, because we're entering at 125 now. But we are proofing it down to be within that historical parameter. So it's an 8-year-old product, minus the first 2 barrels. Those were random flukes that were decided upon in a moment of serendipitous discovery of, oh my gosh, we should totally sell this barrel. Fred was there for the first one. He'll never let you forget. He was there
I
to
know,
pick
he's reminding me
the
every
first
time he walks in here.
president's choice. But I mean, there was a lot of people there. We were doing a KDA barrel selection with a bunch of master distillers from all over the place. It's a great room of palates to all go, wow, yeah, you got to sell this, right? So you don't ignore that. But I whittled it down. I gave Campbell some selections. I proofed them to 110 and 120 for each barrel and sent him home. He was like, I'm going on vacation, so can you get these done before then? And I'm like, oh yeah, totally. I gave him a big giant case of like 50 different barrels at 2 different proofs, and all were at least 110, right?
Dream job.
He was like, so I don't know, because like I went home and I started, I got my space. I was in my basement and I was like, I'm gonna start cracking these open. He's like, I got through like 3 and I was wasted. Like, I'm like, no, you have to spit, Campbell. Like, you can't just drink all this whiskey. But with that, what I really wanted to get a sense of was, what is Campbell's palate? Is Campbell big, beefy, peppery whiskey? Is Campbell like really soft, buttery, like caramel whiskey? So that I can fine tune it for him from there instead of going on a wild goose chase every single time. Right. So we got it narrowed down. I think the final lot that I gave him was 12 different barrels, and of those he picked 6, and then we had the 2 that were surprises. And
surprises, what do you mean? Like you're surprised he picked that one?
No. The first 2 barrels that we picked weren't out of that initial lot that I had pre-selected for him to choose from. They were just random. We were in a moment and all in the warehouse together. But the third expression of President's Choice that came out was from that original design to be released set. Barrel, the 4th release, I must say, is my favorite. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. We've already released the 3rd, so just, keep your eyes on the Old Forester social media pages to maybe get an idea of when you can maybe camp outside the distillery and get the favorite barrel.
I'm just gonna go search around here.
Dude, it's like you took like really rich chocolate cake, like covered in like really rich fudgy icing, and dipped it in Lipton raspberry iced tea out of a soda gun and ate it. That's what it tastes like, and it's so good.
And that's why we'll never be master distillers.
I know. So what is your like ideal bourbon profile, I guess, without being too generic? Like, I know, but I know. I tend to go.
Don't name any names.
I'm not naming names. No. Just go flavor profile. I don't like it too dry. I don't like it too tannic. I don't like it too high in proof. I don't know if that's just me or if that's just my like Pavlov's dog response. So when I'm drinking high proof whiskey, I'm like, I'm at work. You know what I mean? Like, but
no. You go, this is work. This is supposed to be work. This is supposed to be fun.
I know, but like if you go home, like if I go home tonight, like what am I sipping on? Well, usually nothing, because I drink so much for work anyways that like I can't. Human being can,
like, I got to go to the gym.
Right? Everyone's like, oh, you're the best job in the world. You drink all the time, and it's like, no, but then I don't get to drink the way you get to drink because like your liver can only handle so much. But nonetheless, I tend to go a little bit on the sweeter side, but I do appreciate a pretty robust spice finish. I don't like them too herbaceous, but I like them balanced. I mean, I love every single one of these, but which one am I the most excited about drinking? I mean, I'm really excited about the 1910. It's like chocolate syrup. It's so good.
So I do have another question, though.
Yeah.
So, Ryan had hinted at 1910 being a little dusty like and stuff like that. We've got a little bit of love affair with it. But what's the oldest Brown-Forman product that you've actually tried? She's thinking about it.
I'm thinking about this one.
Because you had talked about President's Choice.
The oldest as far as like oldest in the barrel or oldest as in most antiquated, like
antiquated,
old.
like an old bottle that came around and somebody said like, Jackie, I found this in my grandma's basement. You got to try this stuff.
Because I've had some
right.
Just,
yeah. Hey, the guys at Jack Rose in D.C. gave me a bottle of 1984 Old Forester for my birthday. Yeah. Because I was born in 84. It was very sweet of them, and I haven't opened it. I've had 50s. This is where you're going to be like, what? Like, you would think that I would be like, yeah, I want to try that. I want to try that. I want to try that. Okay. Where my mind goes with this is that, and this isn't just Old Forester, this is every single distilled spirit on the market. The industry we are in today is completely different than it was even in the 80s and way earlier than that. I tread lightly on drinking really, really old spirits because distillation techniques were not as precise necessarily as they are today. That's all I'm going to say about that. Not say it's going to like kill you. It's not that at all. No, it's not that. But it was just different back then. And yeah, it can be like fun to taste it and experience it now and what it tastes like now. What you're tasting now is never what it did taste like then because the oxidation has happened. Exactly. So really what is there to gain? And there are a lot of brands, ours luckily is not one of them, that, and I mean everything is published like on what's actually in the bottle. And I always tread kind of light on a lot of the really, really, really old stuff because you're drinking alcohol that somebody made before they really did a whole lot of research on how to make it in a safe way to be consumed. Does that make sense?
No, not at all. Because
none of that makes sense.
Because
really?
I love dusty stuff.
But
I know
why?
you do too.
Why do you love dusty stuff?
Well, I think it. I mean, we go through this. We go back and forth, and you look at 80s Old Granddad, Wild Turkey, and even Brown-Forman distillate. Everything tastes different. We don't know if it's oxidation. We don't know what it could have been. It could have been distillation methods. It tastes like a dusty bottle. It could have been different, right?
Yeah.
And so that's what I was just curious. Like, what's the oldest Brown-Forman product?
I think it's gone back to the 50s-ish for an Olfo. Other than that, no. But, I think it's interesting and fascinating, and it's great. And
also, I have to justify it too because I think as people that drink a lot of bourbon like Ryan and I, you also and
proud.
This is well, I mean,
No.
proud. It's a problem sometimes too, but at the same exact time, it's like you always want to invigorate your palate with something new. Like it's cool to come back and do the same thing over and over again, but at some point you're like, all right, I want to try something new. And then when you start going on the dusty train, you're like, okay, well, this is new. This is fun. This is butterscotch.
It's very unique.
Yeah. So
totally understand that. I totally get that. But I think, I don't know. Because this is my job, I view it totally differently. Not to say it's not your job, because obviously like it's part and parcel with what you guys are doing, but I just view drinking whiskey differently. Because
so you're not a dusty fan?
It's not that I'm not a fan. I think at some point everyone needs to experience it so that you can identify that note that we're talking about, the same note that we talked about with the 1910, of that like sort of like old dusty bottle note. It's that super like, it had more acidity and more vigor at one point, but it's kind of like subtly flattened out a little bit, softened out a little bit. So I think that's great to experience as far as just building your whole Rolodex in your mind of tasting notes. But as far as like, am I going out and buying bottles on the internet and sipping in front of a fire at home? No, absolutely not. Because like, this is work. Like, I actually drink a lot of tequila when I'm not working, so it's fine.
We don't talk about that.
You don't say the T word on this podcast? That's fine.
Well, at least it's not the V word, right? We don't need vodka to talk about. So,
I mean, no, we won't go there.
But I guess a good experiment. Ryan, let's go out. We'll buy a bottle of 1910. We'll sit on it for 30 years and kind of see what happens.
Yeah, exactly. Store it sideways.
Do it, but you're going to have to get two. You're going to have to do one, open it, close it right away, right?
Yep.
And then you're going to have one completely unopened. And in 30 years, you just get back to me and let me know what you think.
I will.
Sounds good.
Like, it tastes even dustier now.
I know. It's dustier than dust.
Hopefully you're still making cocktails by then. But, Jackie, I want to say thank you so much for joining us on the show today. Leading us through this tasting. If people want to know, or at least follow you, do you have some social profiles that can do that?
You can follow me on Instagram for sure at Jackie_Zykan, Zykan, and see what goes on in the world of Jackie's whiskey. Yeah, I guess.
I want to see you
as she's traveling,
scribbling on this slab of quartz.
Oh yeah,
I have a picture. I'll send you a picture. Yeah,
cool. Do that. Scrabble through there. Make sure you go and if you're in the Louisville airport, wave hi to Jackie as you're walking by.
You got to take a picture with it. It's like rubbing a Buddha belly. It's good luck for travel. You got to tag it. You got to do the whole thing.
So if you've never been to Louisville Airport, you can see it. It'll be on. It doesn't really matter right or left hand side, but you'll see her pouring it from a it's just a shaker. Is that what?
There was a mixing glass. I believe it was an old fashioned in that picture, but it is a bottle of Old Forester. They just had to take the branding out of it.
There you go.
Yeah, it's old package.
So you can make sure that's take a picture with her, tag her on Instagram, because now you know that you heard it on Bourbon Pursuit. So Jackie, I want to say thank you again for
Thank you
joining us
guys
today.
very
It's just a
much.
pleasure.
That was awesome.
Yeah, if you also follow her, follow Bourbon Pursuit. Also follow Fred Minnick on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
Don't follow Fred. He's not that interesting. I'm kidding. He's the best.
He's working on his Instagram. He's working on his Instagram game. But, you know, also, if you do like the show, support us, patreon.com/Bourbon Pursuit. And always, please, write reviews. We love reviews.
Yes. We love can't even talk. Love reviews, love
happens when
suggestions,
he goes backwards
feedback,
in your
comments.
drink.
Yep, I know. Yeah,
Backwards
you can see
through
what my
time.
favorite was. Yeah, we love hearing from you guys. So keep all that stuff coming because we do this for you all, and we'll see you next time.
If you love Eagle Rare Bourbon, then go support the causes they stand for at eaglerarelife.com. You can read hundreds of stories, just like the ones you heard today. So go and vote for the 2019 nominees that inspire you the most. Hurry, because voting ends on December 5th.